This is this TV show called Flashpoint. It's on Kenneth Copeland's like TV network, the Victory Channel. Let's listen to what these people have to say to each other about like Donald Trump and what he's up to right now.
With tonight's stuff, let me go to this first tweet from Colin Rugg. Trump has fired FEMA's CFO Mary Cohens after she allegedly paid $59 million to hotels in New York City housing illegal immigrants, according to the Daily Mail.
Okay. I'm not sure that Trump has the right to do this. I don't know for sure. Trump is doing a lot of things that he does not have the right to do, and he's just doing it anyway, ignoring court orders. That's called dictatorship, by the way. Anyway, FEMA stopped paying let me rephrase. FEMA did stop paying for shelter for immigrants, just so that there aren't like thousands of homeless people on the street. Yeah, FEMA stopped doing that. I'm not sure like why you would think that this is a good thing. Why would you do this?
Others involved were also fired. Now, we talked about this last night. $59 million. Now, I know.
Again, I don't even think that's true. Like a lot of the stuff that they're claiming right now, $59 million, somebody took $30 million. It's just made up. It's like completely fictitious. So take it with a grain of salt.
Lance, I'll start with you. You may have a high, fee when you go to stay at a nice hotel, but $59 million is quite hefty. I don't think
they weren't paying that for one person. You realize that, right? It wasn't $59 million per person. Was it even $59 million? I don't think so. This is according to the New York Times. The firings capped a startling chain of events that began on Monday with an early morning social media post by Elon Musk, who claimed misleadingly that FEMA had recently sent $59 million meant for disaster relief to New York City to pay for high-end hotels for migrants, and who called the expenditure unlawful. So Musk claimed that all of the money that FEMA sent to New York City for disaster relief, all of it went to paying for undocumented immigrants to stay in Trump hotels indefinitely or something. That's completely fictitious. New York City officials raced to clarify federal money had been properly allocated by FEMA under President Joe Biden last year, adding it was not a disaster relief grant and had not been spent on luxury hotels. Nonetheless, just 2 hours after Musk's post, FEMA's acting director, Cameron Hamilton, announced that the payment in question has been suspended, even though most of the money had already been dispersed, and that personnel will be held accountable. Acting director meaning, to my knowledge, a Trump appointee. So anyway, unless Trump hasn't appointed them yet, I believe that this is a Trump appointee. Anyway, point is that this is fictitious trash.
The American people were going to buy that very well, so I'm glad to see these guys got fired.
Yeah, what's really amazing about this is it's not just the $59 million. Really, it was $30 million for the luxury hotel, but that didn't.
It wasn't luxury hotels. This is just made up.
Include the food and the clothing, the medical, and the security. That's what rounded it up to $50 million. Remember this Jean Paul, whatever her name was, with Biden, how she denied vigorously that there was any money that was being sent to the illegals when they were talking about how FEMA was.
All right, so these people, like the far right, claimed that the federal government was just like sending debit cards to illegal immigrants so they could just spend it on whatever they wanted. And they didn't even know like who these people were. They were just sending them out to whoever. That's fictitious trash. That did not happen. Like, what's his name? Joe Rogan claimed that some undocumented immigrant was found with like multiple UN debit cards on him and like cell phones, like 5 cell phones. No. None of that happened. None of it. So anyway, that's what they're claiming here. That was a lie. It was all a lie all the way down. That's why Karine Jean-Pierre, I believe, was her name. Real classy there, Lance Wallnau, making fun of her name, by the way. That's what she was saying. She was debunking their lie.
The luxury hotel, but that didn't include the.
Wait, I'm sorry.
How she denied vigorously that there was any money that was being sent to the illegals when they were talking about how FEMA was redirecting funds from the hurricane victims. Well, it's proven to be a complete lie.
No, it wasn't. What he's saying right now is a lie. He's just making shit up because he knows that this gullible audience will buy anything they have to present.
I mean, it's a bald-faced lie, but no, nobody's saying anything about it. Yes, the money was spent. And what's worse is they're doing it at the last minute in defiance of everything Trump is telling them. They're saying, oh, the heck with Trump. Right.
Well, that's because Congress has the right to spend that money, not Trump. This money was allocated by Congress. The president does not have the right to do this. It's a constitutional crisis. He's doing something. He's taking power away from one branch of government. He's violating one of the checks on presidential power and ignoring it completely. The founders would probably have considered this a lost democracy at this point. You know, Benjamin Franklin says, a democracy, if you can keep it. We couldn't keep it. We tried, we failed. I think that elections will likely happen, but they will be show elections like in Russia for the most part. And we will slowly but surely see Democrats be filtered out of office and Republicans filtered in, even if that is like because the Democrats are threatened to resign and then the Republican governors appoint somebody to their seat or whatever, even if that's what it takes.
The check, and they're writing the check like almost like they can't get fired because they know that somehow the swamp is going to take care of them.
Well, and the swamp has taken care of them for many, many terms of many parties when they were president. You know, Luke, I'll go to you. You know, you're the closest to D.C. right now.
Luke Ball, the dude in the middle on the bottom, he was a congressional aide to Madison Cawthorn and somebody else. I don't remember who, but he's basically on the far, far right, like neo-Nazi type of people. And, you know, that's just the type of people that these guys are. So it works out well.
Now, what's the feeling up there amongst
I
the
saw
Beltway?
one Politico article over the last few days that says not only are people upset that they are being rooted out of the deep state up here, but they're worried about property values declining up here in Washington because so many people are going to be fired and pushed out of the swamp.
And they're proud of that. And it's not the swamp. The people that like just administrate things and make sure that like money goes to where it's supposed to go and make sure that like disaster relief is taken care of. That's not the swamp. Those are federal employees. They're nonpartisan by their very nature. It is a nonpartisan position. They're just there to do their job. That's it. And it's like, it's, you know, he has to know that. It is truly sad to watch this unfold. Like all of these people must know. Gene Bailey, I'm not sure he's the smartest. I'm not sure he's the sharpest cookie in the box, if you will. But Lance Wallnau, he absolutely knows. Dutch Sheets, maybe he's just a dumb sucker who fell for it. Rick Green is a lawyer, and so he knows. He knows better. Hank Kunneman, he knows better. Top right is Hank Kunneman. Bottom right is Rick Green. Those two guys know. Lance Wallnau, he knows. He knows what he's doing is completely fictitious and illegal. He's doing it anyway.
There's going to be a flood of supply of the housing on the market. And that's the type of stuff that America asked Donald Trump to come up here and do. We want to make sure that the enormous amounts of money that have been going to these federal agencies for years and years and years actually get sent back to the American people, because it drives me up a wall, Gene, when I hear the media say things like taxes or the federal funds that are getting sent here.
With Luke Ball, I believe that he is also knowingly, intentionally twisting things around, lying, and trying to subvert the legal systems that we have in place. But the way I interpret it, the way that I see him is a little bit different than the others. I see him as a full-blown neo-Nazi trying to push neo-Nazi ideology. The others are Christian nationalists before they're Nazis, in my opinion.
That's the term they want people to use. These are the American people's dollars, what they go into work for. And the amount of money that some people will be like, oh, let's send this over for drag queens in Brazil or to preserve Mexican ducks down in...
Again, this is all lies, what he's saying. This is all fictitious trash.
Cancun or something like that. Some of the outrageous pork spending we've seen there, the amount of money some folks are willing to send that direction, many people will never see in their lifetime. And now we are getting this sense up here that things actually are going to be changing, and the mood is light among conservatives, not so much among our friends on the left.
No, not at all. And I was thinking about this, Rick.
friends on the left, quote unquote.
The people, anybody that owns a small business on up to if you own a larger business, you know you've got to make sure every dollar is accounted for, every expenditure is right.
That's necessary for the U.S. government also, but I'm sorry, I have to draw the line here. The U.S. government does not operate like a company, and it should not operate like a company. Companies are profit driven. Governments should fill gaps where profit should not be the motive. Government should step in when private companies have no reason to do something like feeding the homeless. There's no incentive for that. There's no benefit to feeding the homeless or housing them or whatever. It's pointless for a company. So the government comes in and they do it. That's how it's supposed to operate. There's no financial benefit to making sure that insurance companies pay for your appendectomy. There's no financial benefit to that because they want to push the costs off onto the person receiving the appendectomy. So the government should make sure that there is no price gouging, that medical insurance is available to everybody, that everyone who needs an appendectomy can get one. That's what the government is there for. I'm really, really sick of people comparing the government to a company. It's not, and it shouldn't be.
And you better not mess up on your taxes because they're going to come after you and garnish your wages. Meanwhile, they're supporting themselves across the pond, Rick. I mean,
this is completely made up.
This is what makes Americans so upset.
Well, Gene, you alluded to this, but they've been able to get away with it for so long. They just got sloppy, I think, in many ways, and they just...
Who is they? In his mind, they is the quote-unquote deep state, which means like just regular like librarians, people that work for the government in some way. Librarians, DMV, cashiers or managers, everybody, all the way down the line, including the janitor at the DMV, federal employee. He's the deep state in their mind. I'm not even joking.
Just assume that no one would ever look deep. And I know there's probably only 5 or 6 Flashpoint Army people out there that are UFC fans as much as I am. But when there's a UFC championship belt on the line, at the end of the fight, what they do is they have the two fighters there with the referee in between them, and Bruce Buffer's in the background, and he either says, "and still," and the champ is still the champ, or he says, "and new." And folks, it is no longer "and still." It is "and new." It's a new ball game in town.
Okay, I don't know what the point of that was, but I suppose I go on tangents of my own, so I'll forgive it.
And I know you probably watched it. We're probably going to see some clips of Elon today there with President Trump and just going over a lot of the corruption that no one has been willing to talk about.
Well, first of all, he hasn't covered literally any corruption so far. There's been no corruption that he has uncovered. He's claimed to uncover some, but when that's like investigated, when we look into it, $50 million were not sent to Hamas for condoms. That's just a lie. There has not been any corruption uncovered. None by Elon Musk so far. And aside from that, I'm not even going to have the conversation because the conversation shouldn't be done with the executive branch. This is a conversation that should be had with Congress because they allocate money. In the judicial branch, they determine if things are like constitutional and legal and things like that. The president and anybody connected to him, they have no place to do this. I'm not going to converse about this with them.
And new. They cannot play this game anymore. And Gene, we've said this for a long time in our biblical citizenship classes. When it comes to the Constitution, it's not how much money they're spending on these things. It's what they're spending it on. It's outside the jurisdiction of what government should be doing in the first place. And once you step outside of that jurisdiction, you open the door to all this corruption. So we're going to learn about.
But like, this is all just a lie. It's not outside the jurisdiction of what the government is allowed to do. This is actually adjudicated by a court already. It was decided that all the stuff that like USAID, for example, was doing is all completely within the bounds of the legal system. But here's where we kind of get hung up. Donald Trump doesn't think that. He doesn't believe that the U.S. government should do these things, and he thinks that the courts made the wrong decision, so he's just going to cancel it. He's just going to stop it. That's illegal, what he's doing. This is against the law. We are in a constitutional crisis now. We are in a dictatorship. We're in a fascist dictatorship now. And these people are happy about it. They're smiley. They're laughing. They're saying this is fantastic. Dictatorship, yes, all the way. I see people asking about biblical citizenship. Yeah. He runs an organization, I forget the name of it, but they have this thing that he calls biblical citizenship training, where his organization basically believes that you need to understand the Bible and pass a test before you can be a U.S. citizen, pretty much. Obviously, that's not legal. There are no religious tests to become a citizen, to my knowledge. I believe that's against the law. Now, anyway. But, oh my God, that was just terrible. But he runs it anyway. He gives people the tests, you know, how they do. And he gets like big organizations, big crowds to gather around, and they all talk about stuff and put on sermons or whatever you want to call it and all that other stuff. In fact, Lauren Boebert has spoken of it. And I had a clip go viral on Twitter once about this exact thing. Here it is, right here. Yeah, this is the clip that I pulled out of this TV show, in fact, that went viral on Twitter. Got like, how many? I don't remember how, like, was it like 2 million retweets or something? It was a lot.
Maybe we need to have some sort of legislation that requires Constitution Alive and biblical citizenship training in our schools, and that's how we get things turned around. But there has to be real leadership from the Republicans, especially now.
Constitution Alive is another program that his weird little, nonprofit or whatever it is runs. They do Constitution Alive training, which basically teaches people about their interpretation of the Constitution and advocates for new amendments to allow for Christian nationalism, because it's a living document. They say you should change the document because right now the First Amendment is kind of a stick in the craw, if you will, of Christian nationalism. So anyway, that's the idea. That's Rick Green. That's Rick Green's program.
It's outside the jurisdiction of what government should be doing in the first place. And once you step outside of that jurisdiction, you open the door to all this corruption. So we're going to learn about hundreds of billions, really probably trillions of dollars that's been being spent outside the jurisdiction of what the government should have.
This is just a lie. He's just making this up. This is not true.
Been doing total waste, total fraud, total corruption, and we're starting to learn about it, and the American people are sick of it, and there's a new sheriff in town that's going to get rid of it.
Well, I think you're right. Congressman Byron Donalds says this: update the 4 FEMA employees who unilaterally circumvented agency leadership.
Okay, I don't know what they're talking about, but I immediately doubt everything that they say.
To spend $59 million of our disaster relief funding, which I love the fact they put that in there, on luxury hotels or illegal aliens have.
That did not happen. Completely made up.
Been fired. DOJ is making a clawback demand. FEMA suspended the payments. Accountability is being restored. Dutch, accountability being restored is really, I believe, the key here all across America. We're seeing accountability in so many things suddenly coming back to common sense.
Common sense is not a real thing. Everybody thinks that they have common sense and no one else does, and everybody is wrong. Common sense it's not real. Everybody, all right. Jeffrey Dahmer believed that he had common sense. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and what is so shocking to so many is that these people are not upset that it's happening, the ones protesting, the ones that don't like what DOJ is doing, et cetera. They're not complaining about the amounts of money that are being found and discovered.
Because A, those amounts of money are not being found or discovered. Elon Musk is lying about it. And he even walks it back in some cases. Dude made this outrageous claim. I think it was like $50 million for condoms to Hamas, when condoms cost like 6 cents each or something, for 3 cents each for the federal government. $50 million worth. That would be that you tell me that they bought 1 billion condoms to send to one little group in the Middle East? No. They're not even sending $50 million worth of condoms to Gaza, let alone Hamas. He's just lying about it. He's making it up. And he isn't the one I have the conversation with anyway. It'd be Congress. That's who has the power of the purse. That is who has a right to make decisions about this stuff. Not Elon Musk, not Trump, not the executive branch. That's why I don't care to talk about this with you. Aside from that, people are having that conversation. I don't know what he's talking about. There's actually 800 million condoms at 6 cents each, but we're talking over a billion, if depending on how much they cost.
Just angry that it's being exposed. What could be more telling that they don't care about the people? They don't care about the will of the people, what the people voted for.
Right.
All they want is to be able to keep doing their thing.
Constituents elected senators and members of the House of Representatives who then, while representing their constituents, voted to create U.S. aid. The voters did decide on whether U.S. aid should exist through Congress. That's how this works. Elon Musk, Donald Trump, the executive branch in general, they have no right to erase that. They are erasing the will of the people illegally. And they're twisting it around. They're twisting it around to pretend that they are representing the people, actually. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of when a business owner, I heard Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks, I heard him say recently, he's a business owner that has 75 employees to take care of to make sure that they have food on their table at the end of the day. It's a big responsibility to make sure that all these people are being taken care of. He's feeding all of these children. No, you're not. You know who's feeding those children? The workers. You know who else's children they're feeding, those workers? They're feeding your children. As a business owner, your job is to sit on your ass and do nothing, except maybe make some decisions. And sometimes, as a business owner, you assume some risk. But being a business owner of a large company like Cenk Uygur, reasonably big company with, dozens of employees, that means that you're shielded from a lot of bad decisions that you might make, which is okay. But you're not the one bringing in the money. The employees are bringing in the money, and your ass is taking the money from them. People keep flipping this around to be like, the landlord. Oh, I got to make sure that my people have a place to live. I'm providing a house for them and all this shit. No, they're providing you with money for doing nothing. You're doing literally nothing. You are owning something, and that is generating money for you. I get so sick of this paternalistic trash where people are flipping it around and making it out like, capital owners are the ones that are providing for everybody, when capital owners are leeching off of the labor of other people. They are stealing money from the laborers, or more accurately, I suppose one could say, they are taking care of like some bureaucratic steps on behalf of the laborers, like getting contracts for people and stuff, and assigning the laborers to certain contracts or whatever, depending on like what industry you're in. You work for the laborers, not the other way around. You take money from the laborers, not the other way around. When strikes happen, it's the company that is bringing work to a halt, not the union. It's the company who's refusing to work with the laborers, who's refusing to give them a fair wage, who's taking advantage of them, who's throwing them under the bus, who is stealing money from them. These people, these laborers, they make money by giving a block of their time to a task, to a company. I spend, say, 8 hours. Let me give you a more accurate example. American Atheists, my wife works for them. She gives an 8-hour block of time to this company, right? And they compensate in the form of money. That's the worker business owner relationship. When companies steal money from people, when companies refuse to pay them a living wage, they're stealing time from them, time that they could have spent with their families. Yeah, how much time does a person realistically have in their life to spend with their families? Say maybe they have kids at like 25 or 30. Maybe they die at 70. So 30 years, 40 years, we'll say. 40 years. And how many hours in a day do you have to spend time with them? from 6 o'clock to 9 or 10 o'clock at night after work and before bed. So we'll say 4 hours to be generous. 4 hours times 52 weeks, 4 hours times 5 days a week times 52 weeks a year times 40 years, and I excluded weekends. So we're talking in the vicinity of 50,000 hours total that you can spend with your family for your entire life. When a company robs you of that time, steals from you, they are stealing part of your life that you will never get back. Don't ever let these people flip it around. It is not the laborer's fault. It's this dumb, fat motherfucker sitting on this couch taking the laborer's money and doing absolutely nothing for it. That is the problem. That person. Anyway, like flipping it around and blaming workers for problems, flipping it around and saying the capitalists, the capital owners, the billionaires, the rich, the powerful, they're being victimized. Not the people who are literally giving away hours of their lives that they will never get back. It's the others, the ones that are doing nothing for their money.
What could be more telling that they don't care about the people? They don't care about the will of the people, what the people voted for.
Right.
All they want is to be able to keep doing their thing.
The people voted for this. The people decided on this already. They are, like Trump and Musk, are erasing what the people wanted. Somebody sent I saw that bill. Change Greenland to red, white, and blue land. Yeah, I saw. It's not going anywhere. It's a House bill. There are all kinds of crazy, stupid House bills that get presented all the time. One dude presented a House bill a couple weeks ago, I think, to abolish the IRS completely. It's not happening. It's just not. But it can act as a gauge of how politicians, or the direction that politicians think the political realm is going to go in the near future. They're virtue signaling is what this is. I signal that I have virtues all the time. I signal that I think that it's virtuous to not go to war, to be a good person, to love your family. And so I signal those virtues all the time, but politicians do it cynically to pretend that they give a shit about an issue when they don't. These politicians are signaling that they believe that the country is moving toward abolishing the IRS in the near future, or naming it red, white, and blue land.
And as I was praying about this today, the Lord gave me a scripture from Jeremiah, and in fact, twice in Jeremiah, 6:15, 8:12, the Lord says, were they ashamed of the abomination they have done? They weren't ashamed at all. They don't even know how to blush. Therefore, they will fall among those who fall. At the time that I punish them, they'll be cast down, says the Lord. When people become so hardened in their sin that they don't even know how to be embarrassed anymore or ashamed, that tells you just how far they've fallen. But the Lord is coming to hold them accountable.
I mean, I love that this dude is sitting here saying this. He's saying people are shameless. That's his point. They're shameless. I couldn't agree more. These people that we're listening to right now are beyond shame. They have none. They don't even know the meaning of the word at this point.
And Trump's going to hold them accountable.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and then God's got it all. Let me get Pastor Hank. I want to let you weigh in on this discussion before we move on.
Sure. Well, it's amazing about when you're talking about FEMA, there's supposed to be, emergency management. And it doesn't apply, though. Remember, if you had a Trump sign in your yard.
That's not true. That what he's saying here is a fictitious lie. Just to kind of break down what happened here, if you are unfamiliar, there was, I think maybe Hurricane Milton. I don't remember which hurricane it was. It was a major one, though. There were Trump supporters that were basically causing problems in this little area because they believed that FEMA was there to get them and move them into, I don't know, a concentration camp or some other stupid shit. And they were causing problems for FEMA in the middle of a natural disaster. So one of the heads of FEMA that are in that little area is just like a manager of that little area or whatever. She basically said, just skip it if you see that they're absolute nutcases. Just skip it. Don't worry about it. And that garnered extreme backlash. Now, I personally think that maybe she was wrong to do that, I suppose. could agree with that. I would have to think about it more, I suppose. But what he's saying here, what he believes happened is that that FEMA, like as an organization, instructs their people to not help Trump supporters. That is not true. That is a lie.
Or they knew that you were going for President Trump. And to Dutch's point, I think the people that are protesting this are outraged with, that there's even a question of where the money's being spent. Right. They need to really reflect. What are you hiding? Why are you not wanting all of this to come out? But let's be honest. Those of you that are watching tonight, we all knew that this has been going on. We just needed strong leadership who would be bold enough and willing enough
to break the law. Bold enough and brave enough to break the law. I'm sorry, I don't accept it. I do not accept breaking the law as a solution to this perceived problem, this fictitious issue that you think exists but doesn't.
To expose it and get to the root of it. And Gene, that's what we're seeing happen. Lastly, you remember the bills that they would always bring before Congress? The actual thing that they're trying to, pass was always like 2 pages, and there was the pork spending. Remember all that? It was like 800 pages of stuff that never applied. Well, we've had enough of that. Watch the $1 trillion deficit of America get reduced by who knows how much, but we, the taxpayers, deserve it.
Okay, the deficit is something that the president controls, and I'm actually okay with the deficit being high, as long as that money is going toward things that will reduce the debt and bring in more revenue. That's the goal. But, we're dealing with people who don't give a shit about people's well-being, so here we are. I'm not sure if Hank Kunneman just doesn't understand how the debt and the deficit are different and how they work. I don't know if that's it or if he's lying. I think he's lying about most things, but this one, maybe he's just dumb as dog shit and not intelligent enough to understand how these things work. But I do think that he's just a depraved human being otherwise. I'd write his name as I see it, but I don't want to get yelled at. Okay.
Yeah, we do. In fact, let me show you this with this House Speaker, Mike Johnson, talking about the rule of law. Watch.
As I said last week, the Democratic Party is in a completely different place right now. There's no identified leader of the party. They don't have a clear vision. They seem rudderless. In hopes of finding themselves, they've latched onto this new shiny object called the rule of law.
The ridiculousness of that statement. I don't even know where to start with that. But he's right. Democrats do feel rudderless. It feels like there isn't leadership. You know why? Hakeem Jeffries is the leader of the Democratic Party right now. And he's just dropped the ball completely. He came out there and he said, whatever happens next, just know that God is the one on the throne. Thanks. That was super helpful. I'm so glad that you understand the issue at hand. Really? He's worthless. Chuck Schumer tried to step in and take, control, tried to guide the Democratic Party in their efforts or whatever. He's worthless. I don't even think that Chuck Schumer is a bad guy or going the wrong direction. I just think that no one takes him seriously is the problem. Maybe it's his voice. I don't know. Maybe because no one trusts him generally because he's part of the establishment. He has been forever. I don't know why, but he's just not the guy for the job. He's just not. We need a Bernie Sanders type of figure to rally people immediately, to help organize protests and stuff. We need somebody big to step in that knows what they're doing. And Bernie Sanders, a lot of Bernie Sanders is too old for it, unfortunately. A lot of people are afraid to step in right now because the person that takes charge in the Democratic Party is, historically in these types of situations is the one that dies first. He's the first one in line to the concentration camp. If that is what ended up happening. And all of the Democrats know that, and they're afraid. They don't want to be that guy that ends up in the line to the concentration camp. We need leaders, actual leaders. You guys remember Alexei Navalny? This dude had an apple bag the size of Texas to say some shit that he said to Putin. He was Putin's opposition. He ran against him in the election. And Putin, of course, has the elections rigged, and everybody knew that. But he did it anyway. He rallied people. He said, when I die, which I'm sure I will soon, you guys need to get together and use it as a rallying cry to fight harder. He died with a whimper in a concentration camp, in a Russian concentration camp. We need one of those people to help guide us, as a political movement in the right direction. Bernie Sanders is a great person for that, but again, he's too old. The rest of them are too scared of what might happen to them. So they just shut their mouths.
Well, we'd like to welcome them to the concept. It would be admirable if they hadn't spent the last 4 years with their heads buried in the sand while Biden literally trampled over the rule of law.
That's just complete fictitious nonsense. That did not happen. And this tells me that Mike Johnson is willing to destroy the Constitution on behalf of Donald Trump. People might say Congress exists still, and they can still pass laws and stuff. So it's not like that, Trump has completely erased Congress. That's not how dictatorships form. Even in monarchies, there's still a legislative body. Like in Germany, during the Second Reich, which was a period of time from 1873 to 1919, I believe, or 1918, late 1918, I think, November or something. In the Second Reich, it was a monarchy. They had an emperor, a Kaiser, Kaiser Wilhelm II, who made a lot of the decisions. He guided the armies, and he made treaties and everything else. And he could write laws, I believe. But they had a legislative body still in this monarchy. They had the Reichstag building long before the Weimar Republic existed. In the 1800s, the Reichstag building existed. The Congress building. There's always a legislative body that pushes things to administrate because it takes a lot to run a company. The problem isn't, it takes a lot to run a country. The problem isn't that Trump is taking power completely away from everybody. That's not happening. The problem is that he's taking the power that he wants away from the areas of society that he wants to take it.
With no objection. In fact, many Democrats cheered that lawlessness, like when the Biden administration unconstitutionally forced the middle class to pay the student loans of doctors and lawyers.
That's just complete bullshit. That's not what happened. And besides, that was constitutional. When I believe the Supreme Court decided that it wasn't constitutional, even though it very clearly was, and when they decided that, he said, okay, and he stopped. It ended. He respected the court's decisions. But that's not what happened anyway. And either way, it doesn't matter whose student loans are paid off or whatever. The fact is, we're in a financial crisis in the United States that's going to have to be dealt with. The medical system that we have here, something needs to be fixed. And the student loan system, something needs to be fixed. And if not, then it's headed for a serious crash, which means it's headed for a serious crash. Because, it's not going to be fixed under Trump. It's just not. So what I'm really hearing from Mike Johnson is that he's agreeing to, do whatever it is that Trump wants him to do. That's what I've learned.
When they illegally mandated that private companies implement vaccine requirements, when they radically rewrote Title IX to undermine women's rights.
It's just complete bullshit. He's talking about trans rights. He's saying it was tyrannical for people to think about trans rights. And what was the other thing?
Doctors and lawyers. When they illegally mandated that private companies...
vaccines, right. Vaccines. There was no vaccine mandate for private companies. There was a testing mandate. If you didn't get vaccinated under Biden's law, or under his executive order, you had to get tested once a week, I believe. It was a testing mandate. And you had to go home if you tested positive. That's not a vaccine mandate. You see how they're twisting it around to point the finger at Biden and pretend that Donald Trump literally bypassing the legal checks and balances that exist in the United States government. That's the same as Biden choosing to implement a testing mandate, which is completely within the federal government's power.
Implement vaccine requirements when they radically rewrote Title IX to undermine women's rights. Those things were actually illegal. And
they weren't. I think the Supreme Court decided that to stop some of that, depending on which issue it was. And he stopped. Donald Trump is starting with violating the Constitution. Biden was like, by taking power away from Congress. Biden was doing something that was explicitly like allotted or whatever as one of his powers.
And the Democratic Party cheered it. They didn't oppose it at all. President Trump, by contrast, is taking legitimate executive action.
No, he is not. It is illegitimate executive action
To root out waste, fraud, and abuse in all these federal programs. That's what the American people demand and deserve. That's what they voted for. They voted for a real analysis and a real change, transformational kind of change in the way the federal government works.
It's violating the Constitution by taking power away from Congress, by taking power away from Mike Johnson. I cannot believe that he's like okay with this.
And the only people who take issue with it are these same congressional Democrats who never before had any issue with unelected staff or even bureaucrats running the White House.
Oh, so that's fine now. Like, because they didn't have a problem with it before, the Democrats, nobody should have a problem with unelected bureaucrats doing anything. No, Democrats did have a problem with unelected officials running things. He's just coming up with an excuse for Donald Trump to continue doing what he's doing illegally. Mike Johnson is like such a fucking scumbag, dude. I'm just like disgusted by this guy, honestly. He's like a really bad person in his heart. Like he's just a bad person.
The last 4 years. That's not what's happening here. The president has empowered his new cabinet secretaries and the DOJ effort and all of these branches, divisions in the executive branch of government to go and find where the abuses have taken place.
Not their place. It's Congress's place.
And every time something new is unearthed and uncovered and we share it with the people.
They're not sharing unearthed information. They're lying. They're just presenting lies. Like the U.S. purchased like 1 billion condoms for Hamas. Like how much are they sleeping with each other over there?
They applaud that this has been discovered and they want us to keep going. And that's what's going to happen.
It is what's going to happen.
Anyway, it's just these people are shameless liars who are afraid of the dictatorship, so they're just going to let it unfold in front of them. Next, we're going to have a situation where people are going to have to decide if they're going to uphold their oaths to the Constitution or side with Donald Trump. That's the next step in this process. One can only hope that members of the military and others don't decide not to violate their oath and carry out illegal orders. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments.